Hey, this is Patty Larkin, celebrating 20 years of Retrospectives with John Broughton on 3SER KC Radio. Congratulations, John. Cheers.
Congratulations on the new album.
Thank you.
Contains a wonderful array of musical styles as usual. Did you consciously set out for that diversity?
Well, I think it's a reflection of my musical taste, and I basically didn't edit my selections and where my writing wanted to take me this time, and I think that it spans runs a real gamut of different styles, definitely more than the usual recording for me.
I read you describing the album as being divided up into chapters.
Yes, well, for me the link up between the songs is about fate and twists of fate and how people choose to deal with that in their lives. And because of the style differences, I thought of them as the songs as different chapters connected by these instrumental snippets that connect it musically and stylistically. And so that you can kind of cleanse the palate and go on to the next story, go on to the next chapter. It's interesting when you see all of the music arrayed in an album format, because you start to see the links and your thought process through the last couple of years. So it was a very interesting process for me.
So I gather because of that, in this case, that the sequencing of the tracks you would have taken a bit more care with that than normal. We
did. Yeah, it took a long time, and. But I had even a little bit more music that didn't make it on. So I think the concern was to make it as succinct as possible and flow as easily as possible. And I think we got pretty close to doing that.
Growing up, how big a part of your life was music?
It was huge for me in terms of my family life. Both parents really encouraged us to play piano, take piano lessons, but more than that, they came from a very musical family themselves, and they saw that, I think, as a way to the arts and a connection to their parents, their mothers, and both sides of the families had piano-playing parents, my grandmothers were either a church, one was a church organist, the other one played in silent movies in Chicago. So there was always that tradition of getting together and singing around the piano, and it's some of my fondest memories, I think. And I think that really transferred in terms of positive reinforcement for us girls. And once the guitar hit the house, I was pretty much enamored of it and didn't look back much at the piano.
In terms of making music a career path, was there a defining moment for you there?
I think it was a long transition for me. I was very the music business was a very mysterious business to me, and it still is. That hasn't really changed that much. But I think sitting in the Midwestern part of the United States and loving folk songs and pop music and writing my own songs that ran after that kind of, basically I was going for those kind of sounds and those kind of songs. I think that it was hard for me to figure out how that plugged into what I was hearing on the radio completely. And so at some point I made the leap and really didn't care whether it would have made a difference, but for me, I just wanted to play music, and I didn't care whether I was going to be wearing white go-go boots or playing bass or singing or playing in a lounge in northern Wisconsin, or it took me, and I really wanted to study it and be part of it. And I really didn't count on the fact that I was going to be able to be a songwriter for a living. So I'm very pleased with that result.
You spent some time at the Berklee College of Music, which we hear quite a bit about down here. Can you tell us about your memories there, and how did it prepare you in terms of career?
Well, I think it was a good time for me because I was already studying jazz guitar, and I continued there, and it gave me I was very hungry for knowledge and for the experience, and I spent hours every day practicing and doing homework and things like that, and things that I can't even really imagine doing now. I think that I've lost a lot of the technique and whatnot. But what it did for me was really focus my guitar capabilities and help me learn the neck of the guitar a lot better. And it also gave me a sense of the larger picture of the music. You know, I had been learning by ear and learning from friends and learning blues and a little bit of jazz here and there, but it widens your horizons to get exposed to different styles of music, and that's what it did for me.
What about your development as a songwriter? When did things start to happen for you there?
Well, pretty early on for me. I mean, the guitar came in and to the house, and about a year later, I was probably 12 or so. I started writing songs on it for no apparent reason, and I would force my younger sister to sit down and listen to these sort of maudlin folk songs, and it kept on as an interest through high school. And then once I went into college, I started performing in local places and getting together with people and jamming. I was very involved in traditional folk music in Boston, and so it was something that never really stopped. I think the stylistic changes that I went through are things that have become part of my music today, and I think this album reflects that as well.
Now, your guitar style is very distinctive. You're playing. Can you pinpoint it down to any particular influences, or is a conglomerate of influences there?
Well, I like Brazilian music. That's one thing when I was studying jazz that was a real strong interest for me. But I think starting out too, it was, you know, American folk music and English traditional music, and so towards that end, I love Richard Thompson and John Martin and Leo Kottke, people like that, Bonnie Raitt and Joni Mitchell, and people who really used the guitar as part of their performance and part of their songwriting, and so that has been basically the school I'm coming out of.
I've read and heard many different categorizations of your music, and because you do like to try diversity of styles, I guess it is difficult for people to slot you into a category as they like to do, particularly reviewers. Are there any descriptions of your music that you've heard that have really taken you by surprise?
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm sure there are. I can't think of any right now. I mean, I think that one thing that's surprising is that basically you could choose any female performer, singer, songwriter, and also just, you know, a woman who writes her own songs and sings, and I've been compared to her.
Yeah.
You know, so it's Bonnie Raitt, Lucinda Williams, Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, Judy Collins. Okay, that was way back, and now it's you know, Sheryl Crow and Ani DeFranco, and you know, so it's. But I look at those comparisons as a good thing, because I think that people are trying to figure out: am I doing Spice Girls music? Am I doing, you know, hip hop or whatever? You know, trying to kind of pinpoint more realistically the style that I'm coming out of, and I don't think we haven't really found a good name for it at this point. It's coming out of that acoustic music tradition, but it's definitely influenced by pop and contemporary music.
Do you think it's necessary for reviewers to categorize like that?
Well, I've stopped trying to do it for myself, but I think that I think it's hard to get a sense of the music without hearing it, you know, and so they're doing the best they can. But I notice that when I read an article and someone compares an artist to someone else that I really love, I will probably go out and get the album, get the CD, and I think that we are a continuum of what has gone before. For the most part, there's not a whole lot of people who are changing it up, unless you start to get into electronic and experimental music. But you know, even Moby was coming out of what has gone before. So I think that does give listeners or readers a sense of what tradition you're coming out of.
I read another interview with you where you expressed a desire to write for film.
Well, I've been very fortunate in the last couple of years where I've had 3 different pieces in films, and it's been connected with Sidney Pollack. So that was a real lucky find for me. He found me basically, and through the public radio stations in L.A. And so that's kind of gotten me an in there, and I've had a couple things in television, and I've always, ever since I've been a kid, it's been a goal of mine, and so now I have a new publisher, and I'm hoping to do a little bit more of that.
Would you, if you had to pinpoint yourself down to one aspect of your music, would you consider yourself more a singer, songwriter, or musician, or are they all equally important aspects?
That's a good question. I think that that probably the singer-songwriter end. Although I'm starting back to writing again, and it's harder than I remembered. So I give that up while I'm out touring. I've been recording for the last year, and now touring for all of the fall, and so now I'm getting back to writing, and you have to start thinking about what you want to say again, and I think that the way I come back into it is back through the guitar and through the music and listening to music that am inspired by, and so that's what works for me, and I think that one reason why I want to learn music or play music is so that I can write something that makes me feel the same way. It gives me that kind of an emotional surge that I get from playing someone else's music.
So generally, as a rule, you don't write when you're on the road?
Generally not. No, not anymore. I mean, not on these long hauls. It's just mainly survival. But now I'm going back to a little bit more of a reasonable schedule, so I think there'll be a little bit more downtime. But I just did 45 cities this fall, and it's just, it's when it comes down to, are you going to sleep or are you going to stay up and write a song? You pretty much choose to sleep.
Don't blame you. Yeah.
One thing I do find, though, on the road is I hear bits and pieces of things that stick in my brain, or I see visual things that follow me back home, and I think that ends up in my writing, and I also am able to come up with little ideas that I tape, and I bring that back home. You just don't have the 2 and 3 hour periods of time that I need anyway to develop an idea.
So even though you're not physically writing, the ideas are still generating.
I think so. Yeah, definitely. It's very it's high intensity in terms of the input that you get, and oral and visual, and there's something about being slightly exhausted the entire time that has an impact on you.
For sure. Let's talk about the studio. How do you rate the studio as a place of enjoyment? Do you enjoy your time in there?
Well, I've been a convert to the home studio religion, and I don't know if I'm going to go back much. I mean, the new technology that's out as of the last 5 to 6, 7 years has made it much more affordable for musicians of my ilk to work in a much smaller environment that includes the home, and then you can bring the work to a larger studio for different projects. But actually, I really feel like just about everybody is working on all different types of equipment nowadays, but that has increased my enjoyment greatly, because I'm able to be by myself with an engineer, or be by myself with someone I really trust running the board, and then go back and try something else, and if it's not working, and so it gives me more time. It gives me the feeling of control. Whether or not I have the control, I don't know, but I can go back as a producer and listen to the tapes and see what we've got, and so that has made a big difference for me.
One thing I've always admired about your work, and one thing that stands out, is you strike me as someone who's not afraid to try different things in the studio, to experiment a little bit. Do you think it's a mistake that many people make to stick with what they know and to just play things safely in the studio? Well,
I have always, my goal has been to get the feeling that I get live, and to get that spontaneity that I have in a live performance, to try to get that in the studio, and I think that is the challenge. You want it to be perfect, and you want it to be technically amazing, and sometimes you lose a bit of the spontaneity, or you lose some of the excitement that in a take that might have a little bit of a clam somewhere along the line. When I listen to Miles Davis and Bill Evans, and there's a clam, Miles is playing the melody of the tune, and he makes a mistake right at the top. I go, God, that's so amazing that he didn't start the tape over. You know? And you're so glad that he didn't, because it feels so good, and so you have to constantly make those kind of judgment calls in terms of do we keep this or do we move on, or let's just let this one go. And a lot of times with other musicians, I'll just say, I don't even want to tell you what I want. Why don't you just listen to it a couple times and play along with it, and they can come up with some amazing ideas, and then we can work on my ideas as well. So it's a good exchange that takes place, I think.
Now, just as there's diversity in your musical styles, also the subject matter of your songs can be that way, from the serious to the comical at times. Are you constantly aware of bringing in that light and shade?
Well, I like humor. I use it in my daily life, and I think that it's something that I've used in my writing for the last 10, 15, 20 years maybe. It's a way for me to connect with people, and I used to write more novelty type songs. I've kind of given that up for the last 10 years, and I'm kind of threatening to come back to that idiom. But for the most recent past, I've been using humor in serious songs as a way to just give perspective or just take a break for a second. And I was inspired by people like John Gorka, who, he's in the middle of a heart-wrenching love song, and then he says something that just cracks you up. And a lot of times I can tell that an audience is listening, whether they're listening or not, by what they respond to. And I'll know right away in the beginning of the set of music that, oh my God, they laughed at that line. They got it, So it's a good way to connect with people, and it's probably part of my personality.
You struck me as an artist that would need to be with a record label that is pretty open to giving the artists creative freedom. Is that the way it's been through the labels that you've been with?
Yes, most definitely. I mean, the first label I was with was Philo Rounder, and they're still, very free in terms of what they give to the artists, the freedom they give to the artists. And High Street, Wyndham Hill, when I was there, was pretty early on, and it was a very creative place. And now Vanguard is doing the same type of thing. They've created this songwriting arm that is full of singer-songwriters, and basically told me, if there's something you want to write that you don't think is necessarily going to be, potentially a radio hit, go ahead and write it. Go ahead and we'll put it out. We like what you do. We like your production ideas, and so they kind of gave me free rein, as it were, and didn't really check in with me until the whole project was finished. So there's not a whole lot of companies out there that are like that anymore, and we're finding that it's, the whole industry has shifted, and I think it's becoming very interesting. I think it's much more of a guerrilla war out there, and some of the larger labels are going to find that there's a lot going on beneath the surface here. That is coming at it from a very creative angle. So I'm very hopeful at this point.
It is great to see Vanguard out there back with a high profile again after they went quiet there for a few years.
Yeah, the Welk family basically bought the label in '85 or '86, and they've been putting out compact discs of all the old catalog until the last maybe 5 years, when they signed Peter Case and then David Wilcox. So they're very gung-ho. Kevin Welk's very into this music, so it's really refreshing to be with a label that once again that's behind what I'm doing.
And a label with such a great tradition too.
Yes, I mean their catalog is unbelievable, and they have a lot of jazz that they're pulling out of the archives, and they're remastering and putting back out again. So it's kind of a love project for them, and it's exciting to see it happening.
Your albums through the years have come at, I guess you could say, regular intervals. Have you been able to routine yourself well with writing, recording, and touring?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this year it basically became a little bit too much. I did a live album that came out in September a year and a half ago, and then this album came out in July. And the only toll that it took for me was just the amount of time I had to spend in the studio. The live album, the project just took a lot more time from the writing and from the recording. So of the studio album. So I probably won't do that for a while now. Now I've experienced putting out two albums in 1 year. Sorry, but I think that the next thing I want to work on is going to be a compilation of some sort. So it'll give me a chance to go back to writing and put something out again in a couple of years.
So there's nothing in the way of new material stored away yet?
Well, no, there's nothing, which is a good clean slate. I mean, there's a couple of the rejects from the last album that I don't think they're going to make it their way back, but unless they crawl inch by inch over the abyss and come back. But I think that I'm looking forward to doing something different, and I don't know whether it's going to be. I keep going back and forth whether I want to get more structured and go more pop, or do I want to just kind of stretch out and go back to the stream of consciousness writing. So we'll see. We'll see what takes me.
And just before we wind up, Patty, any plans or approaches for a visit down under?
There's some discussion going on. One of the new agents at my booking agency has just spent 7 years in Australia, so maybe 2002. There's talk of that.
Oh, excellent! That'd be fantastic.
I would love it. Yeah, I've heard only wonderful things about the circuit down there, so I would love to come by.
There's plenty of wonderful festivals here to play with, and some great smaller type acoustic rooms which you'd go down a treat in.
Oh,
and
great.
I can tell you that your current album is getting quite a bit of play on public radio down here too.
Oh, fabulous! Well, I've connected with Jeff Lang over the summer this year,
of
so
course,
that's fun. Yeah. So he's told me a lot about the area, and I would love to come. So perhaps I hope so.
We'll keep our fingers crossed for that.
Thank you.
Okay, Patty, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time this morning. Thanks for all the wonderful music, and have a good rest after your tour, and enjoy your Christmas, and we'll keep our fingers crossed for a visit sometime in the future.
Okay, happy holidays to you too.
Thanks, Patty. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.